We just need to give those Disc Priest mains a little bit of a push, you know? We need to start adding some like Grievous and Bursting together or something like that, and then we'll do that in like Necrotic Wake, for example, and that'll make everybody just go to Holy Priest. I think that would work out really well. Just gotta give them the right push to be able to get it done, because hey, if you're running Kyrian as well, that's most of the damage that, you know, Priest healers are bringing to the dungeon, so there's not that much variety. But enough about me harping on Priests. Game number 1 between Omega Pump and Incarnation is ready to roll. Let's get into it here in Mist Tier to Scythe.
Oh.
Wow, so there's a Moonkin on Incarnation
yes, there
side.
is.
All right. Well, this is actually not something that was really uncommon in previous seasons, but this season we haven't seen Moonkins anymore in this dungeon because they managed to do the first boss one phase without Moonkins, right?
Yes, but this Moonkin is a very special kind of Moonkin. This is one that we definitely haven't seen before in the MDI. This is the Kyrian Moonkin.
Oh no!
Yes.
Wait, we did see that before though.
Oh yeah, okay.
I remember in like Spires. I remember someone was playing it.
All right. Well, we haven't seen it yet this season, at least. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
This is a niche choice for sure, but one that Incarnation have been practicing at least for this dungeon I know about. So definitely something cool that they've got going on here. As a Moonkin specialist, what is the point of playing Kyrian on this class?
Well, okay, so Kyrian has never been like a bad Covenant when it comes to damage, but the difficult thing about Kyrian is that your Covenant ability basically bonds you to another player, and then every 1 minute you can empower that bond and give the other player damage, and the other player gives damage to you. But it's so difficult to actually optimize this that theoretically it was always like a really high DPS kind of Covenant, but realistically it wasn't, just because you couldn't actually perfectly align cooldowns with other people and make sure that everyone uses their damage exactly when you activate that bond. But in such a controlled environment like the MDI, where you know exactly who is pressing what at which time, and if you can exactly calculate that beforehand, then I do think it can be really valuable.
Yoda is also playing the Kyrian Legendary, which means that he and his bonded partner, who I assume is Cryptix, are permanently getting haste, and they get even more whenever they empower that bond as well. Looks like Yoda's maybe moving the Kindred Spirits around, though, as they go into this boss. So yeah, maybe this is the kind of thing that they have so planned out that they are getting a lot of value out of it. But I mean, Omega Pump here playing a much more standard melee gang composition, right? They are instead on that Prot Warrior, the Hunter Rogue, and then the Monk, and they've got all this physical damage increase stacked up, and then of course the Holy Paladin to do damage. And they are look at the damage meters here. All their players are doing even amounts of damage, but they aren't yet in their burn phase, where Incarnation have actually caught up almost here. They are almost into that burn phase already, so this is going to be really interesting to see as Omega Pump reach that first burn phase. The cooldowns come down, the Resonating Arrow, all the damage starts coming out. Incarnation also starting to go off here. Yoda empowering a bond here with somebody. Looks like I actually don't even know with whom he's empowered this time, but this is a lot of damage on both teams. Yoda's actually doing so much on that Kyrian as well. Maybe it's Junkrat actually that he's bonded with here. Wow.
Yeah, it looks like it is Junkrat actually. He's the one with that blue glow around him. But yeah, that was a huge amount of damage coming out of Yoda and Junkrat as well. But Omega Pump, with their full physical comp, they're already done with the boss as they're moving onto the roof. It looks like they might be getting the roof a bit lower and then just pulling it into the rest of the trash. But yeah, now you can see Yoda just reusing his bond and using it on a different person. This makes sense because the bond is ready every 1 minute, so you can just switch it to different classes whenever the cooldowns are down from others.
So maybe the idea is it's on Junkrat for Shadow Blades, and then it's on Cryptix for the next 2, and then it's back on Junkrat for the next Shadow Blades. That could be a pretty good way to make it work. The way the Legendary works is that it does a different stat based on the covenant of the player you're bonding with. So whenever Yoda and Junkrat are bonded, they are both getting crit. But whenever Yoda and Cryptix are bonded, they're both getting haste. And that's actually really good stats for all parties involved. That works out nicely, so everybody I think is pretty happy about the way that the stats are being redistributed here. It's just very important, like you said, that they don't get desynced off of their game plan about when all of these cooldowns are getting used. I imagine the maze is a really tough part for this sort of thing, right? Because the maze can really have slightly, if you've got 30-second different cooldown timings, from one maze run to another, because of course it is different. Oh my goodness, they're pulling Varuth into this pool, not the previous one as well. Incarnation they are doing something different here than what Omega Pump have done. So they're actually in the same spot in the dungeon, but Incarnation still have Varuth here. They are a little bit behind, but this cool strat may help them catch up a little bit.
I think I like the strategy. We've seen Echo do this dungeon yesterday, and they did the same thing that Omega Pump. Did they just pull the Matriarch through? Oh, wow. Okay, Omega Pump just pulled the Matriarch through the maze, it looks like. That's something I've never seen before, because we've seen other packs being pulled on top of the Matriarch, but I've never seen the Matriarch being pulled into an existing pack. Very interesting. They also committed their Ashen here, so it does make sense because they have a lot of damage for this pack specifically. Getting that extra single target in for Mace time, probably. Just having the Rogue focus down that higher HP target. Incarnation now down with Varuth, and now they are having to deal with the Matriarch. You see Yoda sending the trees, or it looked like he was trying to send the trees over to pull something, but not sure if it actually worked out because they were walking back to the Matriarch.
Yeah, a challenge on the side of Incarnation is that they don't have any traditional pets on their lineup, right? Cryptix is playing Lonely Winter, so that's no Water Ellie to send on that mission, and everybody else on the team doesn't have pets, whereas Omega Pump does have access to Dr. J's pets to go and pull stuff through the walls. There were a lot of ways to sneakily pull things through the walls, trinkets, shards of domination, but for the most part, those get fixed as they get used, and I think they've mostly all been fixed now, so there's not really these sneaky ways to pull things easily over the wall, and you instead need to have a class that can do it easily. And it seems like, yeah, the trees, being something that's a little bit less reliable for doing it, a little bit harder to make sure those pull the mobs you want them to, than a hunter pet that, of course, just is easy to command.
Yeah, the way you can do it with trees from a Moonkin, because of course they are pets, but they cannot be controlled. Once they are, once you have that target circle, you put them on the floor, and then they just do whatever. They kind of go on your target. So the way you can sometimes pull them through the wall is you target them up on the other side, and then you put the target circle of the trees halfway through the wall, and then sometimes you walk onto the other side and pull them. But then if it doesn't work out, then you have no way of changing the direction of them, and I think that's what just happened to Incarnation. Yoda tried to pull them, but the trees just didn't do what he wanted to, and didn't actually pull through. So that might have actually been a pretty big time loss for Incarnation, because they had to deal with that Matriarch all by itself and didn't really pull anything else. Omega Pump already moving onto that next area. Again, just having more and more trash being pulled on top with Dr. J's pet. Looks like he's got the deal. I'm not sure if he's dispelling. Oh, okay, he had Turtle being used. But there was apparently no dispel on that debuff he had. And I'm pretty sure that just one-shots you if it's not dispelled. So he had to commit that Turtle there.
Big silence comes out from Omega Pump with that wailing arrow out of Dr. J, of course. Hunters do get to cheat and wear 2 legendaries this patch. They have that Sylvanas bow, and it's actually quite a bit of value to silence a whole pack like this. There are a couple of casters that are in some of these maze pulls, and it's a nice little bit of extra utility that the Hunters do bring this patch. So, not of course something that you ever have to worry about on live servers, because I know Hunters that you play with will ever actually be lucky enough to ever find a bow, but if you do happen to know one, that is a big nice thing they get.
Yeah, it looks like Incarnation is already at the boss, which is very early considering their percentage.
Yeah.
They're at 47%. They do have another pack that they're dealing with right now during the boss fight. But yeah, they're still not going to end up being that high in percentage. So we'll see if they maybe pull even more trash on top of the boss after. That would be incredibly efficient. If they manage to pull multiple packs on top of this boss, then that would be the maximum efficiency, basically, because you have to deal with that boss anyway, and you just passively cleave it down. Well, Omega Pump now reached the boss as well, and they're up to 61% trash.
Yeah, I suspect that Incarnation isn't going to find a way to get more trash into this boss pool. They've already fired off their Ashen Hallow here, and the boss is getting quite low. They're going into the next guessing game. So I think what's going to happen here is Incarnation is going to exit this boss fight maybe 30 seconds ahead of where Omega Pump are, but they're going to have 6% less count. I actually think that's a good trade for Incarnation. I think you can get 6% at the end of this dungeon faster than 30 seconds, and actually might be more like a minute even that they get on this boss. I'm not 100% sure. So I think Incarnation are in a good position here, but it is tough to tell. And again, with the way these different comps operate, right, you can see Mode is now pulling the trigger on the Ashen Hallow as well, so this might accelerate things for Omega Pump, and wow, Omega Pump actually are pulling even more trash into this, so they are going to come out of this boss with even more count advantage.
Yeah, so very interesting differences in routes here. Omega Pump is going to have to do a lot less trash afterwards because they're pulling so much in this maze area. Incarnation, though, after the boss is dead, there isn't actually any more trash you can pull from the maze. It all just disappears. So at this point, they have to get that 45% from the downstairs area. And 45% from downstairs is definitely a lot, but you can do a lot of big pulls there. The only thing that they have to worry about is those the stag horns that cast the shield and the heal. So those are really dangerous because you need so many interrupts for one of them, because one single player can't interrupt at all, and they're not sustainable otherwise. They can't be stunned or knocked or anything like that, so really have to be careful to get those interrupts out. It looks like they're doing a triple or maybe even quadra pull here, as they pull the right side and the middle as well. So lots of interrupts that need to go through here.
Yeah, this is a big pull coming out for Incarnation. Are those bees going to come in as well? Yeah, looks like they are. The Reavers. Also extra damage, although it's nice to have a Druid for this. The Poison Dispel, actually pretty valuable out of the Druid. So nice little piece of utility there. I guess Monk can do that too, right? Mm-hmm. So that actually means...
Actually, no, I think they can only do disease.
Oh, only disease, right, yeah. So Incarnation, that definitely have a nice little bit of extra value if they end up getting multiple stacks of those nasty stings on members of their group here. This pull is so nasty, but look how much damage Cryptix and Yoda are doing. I imagine a lot of this damage for both of them as well as that Empowered Bond. I think this is definitely some of this can be attributed to that Kyrian Covenant choice by Yoda.
Yeah, definitely. And Yoda also committed his 3-minute cooldown here, Celestial Alignment, to make sure that this pull is dealt with quickly. Now we can see Incarnation is ahead in trash. So the trash that Omega Pump did extra in the maze is already caught up now by Incarnation. So this is a very interesting route so far to look at, because at some point I thought, oh, Omega Pump is ahead, and then it's like, oh, Incarnation is ahead. It wasn't really easy to tell which kind of route is faster, but at this point it definitely looks like Incarnation is in the lead, because they are already pulling this trash on top of Tredova, and this might get they're still gonna need more trash after this, but I believe they can get that done in one pull. So they need to do this pull. This Gorger is reaching the middle and he's been interrupted. There we go. They got the Fear Sigil onto it to make sure it doesn't heal to full and get that enrage.
What? The Gorger reaches the middle and eats that seed there?
Wait, you don't know that?
No, I've never had that happen before.
Yeah, so if you pull the axe into the boss, then they attempt to walk into the seed and eat it, and then they heal to full if it goes through, and they get a really nasty buff. It's like a huge damage increase, like an enrage that cannot be dispelled. So yeah, I definitely don't want to see that happen. That
is crazy. I have never seen that before. That's something that you would only see as well if you were like pulling these massive MDI style pulls onto this last boss all the time. That is very cool. All right, Incarnation, 43% on Tredova. Look at the damage Cryptix has been putting out on this pull. This is a beautiful Frost Mage pull, just permanent 5 targets under the boss. You know, hitting everything with all of your spells all the time, getting all your cooldown reduction effects going. And yeah, I mean, the whole team is just is doing so much damage here. Junkrat fighting for that 3rd place spot in the meters against Dorky on that Vengeance Demon Hunter. Eventually does take that spot. Of course, if we looked at boss damage, we would see Junkrat way up near the top of that. That is his specialty on the Subtlety Rogue.
I just realized that Yumi's paladin is called Yumi Paula Kier.
Yeah.
And for a second I was like, wait, he's playing Kyrian? But then obviously I saw the Venthyr
Ginji's
icon next to it.
Fae Mage is the same thing. It's Ginji Kyrian. That's a Night Fae character.
Oh, beautiful! They're trying to throw us off.
Yeah.
As Tredova now goes down for Incarnation, they still have that 12% trash they have to deal with, and this is the pool where Echo actually had a full team wipe. yesterday. So let's see if Incarnation can pull it off. They're just pulling everything. And you can see that they don't actually they do have Yoda's Incarnation ready. So they do have a bunch of cooldowns that they're committing for this pull. And Omega Pump, they're pretty far behind at this point. They're still on 55% Tradova. At this point, it's all eyes on Incarnation. Somehow they're pulling this off with this very interesting strategy and interesting route as well. I mean, having that Kiri and Moonkin is definitely something.
Yeah, this is something that I know Tettles will be delighted about when he whenever he wakes up and shows up for the later matches today. This beautiful off-covenant choice. This is actually still going to be really close, though. 27% on Tradova for Omega Pump as Incarnation reached 95% count. But Mick goes down for Omega Pump, and they put down the world marker and are going to fire off the battle res, but it is too little too late. Incarnation have stopped the clock here, and they are going to take game 1 in this series. Wow.
All right, Incarnation constantly here with the innovation, off-covenant choices and everything like that. 15-minute run here in Mists. Extremely well played to be able to start off our series. And yeah, Echo did have some deaths and everything like that, but that seemed like a pretty strong time that could compete with an ideal Echo run there, Zyro.
Yeah, I think this is actually pretty much on pace with Echo's run yesterday, and that's kind of wild to me considering they have this like extremely weird Kiri and Moonkin tech. I'm pretty sure you guys were just nonstop talking about it during the cast too. Like, that is such an off-meta pick, but it worked out beautifully for them. And we're going to go over like what some of the downsides of it later, but I mean, the damage really wasn't too bad, right? He was doing relatively decent overall damage, comparable to the Hunter, better than the Hunter even. So maybe we're just, I don't know, maybe they've got something, a one-up on us. Maybe Incarnation's got the juice on the new meta that nobody else is considering, right? Running the Prot Pala, running the Kiri and Boomkin. Who knows?
Yeah, and I think it really pays off for them as well when we're looking at just how these teams have been able to perform. And I think also it's a bit about the greed that you can get. I particularly noticed it at least on the first boss, where you were watching Omega Pump, just everybody dropping so crazy low all together and everything like that. And we talk about some of the little bit of off healing that you can at least get from time to time with the Druid when they really need to, Nagura, and being able to stabilize everybody so everybody can be a little bit greedier to bring down that first boss seemed to be quite helpful.
Yeah, I mean, Druid is obviously known to have so much utility, right? Obviously, all of that utility can be so helpful, and that's always something that also cannot necessarily be calculated exactly in how much time or damage it actually gives you, right? Because obviously, something like a Typhoon or a Vortex or even an Innervate, stuff like this doesn't actually translate directly into DPS numbers, but it might still somehow give you speed in a dungeon by making a pull easier or by making sure the mobs are gathered up more or something like that, right? So having the Druid utility always somehow useful, and then buffing your mage and getting those extra stats on other damage dealers, I do think they might be onto something here.
That's right. And Zyro, you were talking about some of the positives and negatives as well. Let's zoom in on that a little bit more. What do you got for us?
Yeah, the consistent damage seems pretty good, but one of the major strategic issues they have with this comp in this dungeon is their only way of pulling trash through the walls is through the use of those trees. You can see at the start of this clip, Yoda ran off to the side here and dropped his trees right next to the door because they run towards the nearest target. That's the only way this team had a chance of pulling things through the wall, and they had 49% trash when they got to Mistcaller here, whereas Omega Pump had 61%. But the strategic differences are really important. There is a way to phase Mistcaller without triggering the intermission ads. Incarnation knew how to do it. Omega Pump didn't, and that saved Incarnation like 30 seconds overall in the dungeon, catapulting him to the lead. And then just to add on top of that, this double trash pull on top of Tradova just catapulted them even further ahead, and that was all she wrote from there.
Yeah, being able to skip that Mistcaller phase is actually so incredibly difficult to be able to pull off. It's something with just being able to put out enough damage before the cast is going to begin, so you sort of like push past that point. We've done it a couple times on like live keys and everything, but even when you sit there and you prepare for it every single time, honestly, sometimes it's just a straight up coin flip. So very fortunate by Incarn. If they're able to do that consistently in practice, call me. My team could use some of those strats as well. We could really use help in Mists. It's a little bit of a struggle. But with that victory, we are going to be setting our sights here, Dratnos, on game number 2. Spire's Fortified Raging Explosive.
Yeah, it is plus 19 as well. So this is the biggest key level jump you can do, right? Our series where this is one of those roller coasters, right? 22, 19, 22. That's actually quite a lot of mental work as well to kind of adjust yourself between those settings. Spires of Ascension on this difficulty, I'm curious to see what Incarnation have for us here as well. I feel like if you're going to play Kyrian, Moonkin, and Mists, then that probably means you're going to play it in Spires, but I don't know for sure. This has been, as Nagura mentioned, historically one of the most Moonkin-y dungeons in prior seasons. So if you're about it in Mists, I think you might be about it in Spires also.
If that was the case,
I think we've seen it before. I think this was in season 1 in Shadowlands, where we've seen Akiri and Moonkin in Spires. It ended up not doing that well, though. But we also didn't have Akira in Legendary back then. We didn't have that stat buff, so maybe it's better now. Who knows?
Got a lot of hope there, Nagura. Hopefully, maybe, possibly. Yeah, we'll have to see, because Incarnation, they've really been just paving the way throughout this tournament thus far, Zyro, on the back of innovation. So it's constantly, well, let's see what they're doing new here. And that's so crazy for a team that doesn't have a ton of history in something like the MDI tournament, where they have Yoda, they have some veterancy and everything like that. But man, they are coming out the gates just blazing their own trail.
Well, the thing that's really interesting to me about the comp decisions they've concluded that are best for the MDI for them is that, I play with this team a lot on live keys. I play with them a lot, actually. And I talk to them a lot, and it's kind of weird to me that,
very cool, Zyro.
Hunter is the choice that Yoda didn't go with, right? Because that's been his main character for a couple tiers now, and he's always talking about how he's so great in keys, and he doesn't like playing Moonkin, exactly. Yeah. But somehow he finds himself on Kyrian Moonkin, of all things, in the MDI. That's just so weird that they would arrive at that off-meta decision. But again, I mean, it's working out great for them. So
maybe he's just one of those people who secretly loves Moonkin, but they know it's not cool to be a Moonkin main, so he just doesn't want to say it out loud.
Maybe he just hates Vinther Moonkin. Maybe he just wants to be cool. Maybe we're going to see Necro Moonkin out of him next.
There we go. Yeah, I don't think we've seen any Necro Druids at all. We got to fill out our bingo card here, Dranos.
To go to AWC to see the Necro Moonkins?
Oh, is that a thing there?
Oh my it is PvP. Actually good in PvP. Yeah, you can collect the 4 Infinity Moonkins and get your the full power going.
Not do it myself. We're ready to see Omega Pump and Incarnation getting themselves ready, and it's kind of a scary position as well for Omega Pump. We've been really fixated here, Nagura, on the Incarnation team for all the the innovation that they've been doing. But let's not forget, Omega Pump formerly does Gargoyle Stream, crazy amount of veterancy through MDI. They've got Dr. J, who of course is as old as time itself here from his manor in Transylvania. He's done such a great job of putting together strong MDI teams every single season.
Yeah, and I mean, Omega Pump, they're the second seed. They're supposed to win against the third seed, right? And we talked about this whole curse that we had in Group A and Group B, where the second seed didn't make it, but the third seed actually got that second slot into the Global Finals. And Omega Pump probably feeling that pressure. They know the curse is, looming over their heads. They need to win against Incarnation here. And it's not looking good if they lose that first dungeon already against them. Now Spire's coming up. Such a difficult dungeon to execute well, especially because it is such a the lowest key level that we have. Usually, because we've seen Echo do this dungeon yesterday, and the pulls that they did were crazy. They're so risky to execute. So yeah, excited to see what Omega Pump and Incarnation have for us here.
That's right, waiting on the teams to get ready before we get into it. Incarnation currently up 1 versus Omega Pump. The winner is going to be moving on into the upper bracket playoff against Echo, where they'll be 1 win away from qualifying for our global finals. So again, this is Group C, and there is going to be one last stand tournament where 6 teams will have 1 spot to compete for our global finals. So thus far, Zyro, we've had so many teams already qualifying. We've had 5 thus far, 2 more this weekend. and then we have our last stand for a total of 8. And both of these teams want to make sure that they are getting into that spot, but man, it is a tall, tall task for anyone to get there.
I mean, in the immortal words of Trekkie, these teams all want to be first. But if first is what they can't be, then they all want to be second.
That is not true. Not incorrect.
Yeah, that's not wrong. You know?
Especially in this format, right? They're trying to get that ticket to the global finals. This is it's almost as good. Not quite though, and they would really like to win, but both teams actually have some wild stuff going on here as we get underway. Maystein breaking out the Affliction Warlock here, whereas on the side of Incarnation, the stars have indeed aligned. Yoda is playing Kyrian Moonkin once again.
Wow, that is actually so interesting to me. I just have...
He's doing classic Moonkin damage here.
No, but it's interesting to me that Omega Pump is playing Affliction in Spires, but not in Sanguine Depths.
Yeah.
They played Sanguine Depths yesterday, and they chose to play Frost Mage, Windwalker Rogue. And we kept talking about Affliction being so good in Sanguine Depths, and they didn't play it, and now they play it in Spires. That is a very interesting choice. But in this dungeon, there's also a lot of trash you can pull on top of bosses, specifically on the first and the third boss, where you can pull the Usurpers. Second boss, also possible, but the trash that you can pull is not necessarily preferable. And to the last boss, you can't really pull anything. So yeah, interesting choice, as both of them now gear up to do a pretty big pull, maybe into the first boss. Yeah, looks like Incarnation is just pulling everything. They got the Tormentor, they got the trash with the Goliath, and they got the boss. Let's see if they can execute this, because this is dangerous. And Omega Pump doing the same thing on their side too.
Yeah, this is a big damage opportunity here for Incarnation, but they have to get this pull done before that Ashen Hallow expires. Once that happens, they'll be in a lot of trouble. Ooh, they barely managed to get that kick as well. And there's explosives that need to be looked out for as well. This is, of course, explosive also, I think it's something that's active this week as well on the live servers, although slightly different affixes. Otherwise, definitely something you need to watch out for on this boss when that bird goes and flies far away. But wow, Incarnation have done it. They have destroyed all of this trash. Omega Pump not far behind either. They have finished off this Goliath in a couple seconds here, and they are about equal on boss percent, so both teams really close here. You can look at the damage, and actually it's on Omega Pump's side, the Affliction Warlock just cranking. Whereas in Incarnation, really all three of their DPS are doing a lot of damage. Junkrat Vent, of course, the Necrolord Windwalker at the top there.
Yeah, so definitely very different kind of DPS. I mean, it's not even that different. They have two classes that are the same, and one of them is different. But if you look at the damage meter, it does look very different, because that Affliction Warlock is basically just single-handedly doing all of that AoE damage, while it looks like Dr. J and Mick were trying to focus more on single target, because they knew the longer the ads are actually up, the longer the Affliction Warlock is going to be useful. Because I'm pretty sure as soon as the ads are that, with the spec that the Affliction Warlock is running, their single target is going to be a little bit weak. So they want the ads to be alive as long as possible, so they can just spam those seeds. And it looks like they're doing a Praetor pull with the claws on the left side on a Megapunk. But Incarnation, did they pull the...
They've gone much bigger. Yeah, Dorky went on a mission over to the left, and they bopped Cryptics, who pulled all this stuff on the right. And then they used Ring of Frost to keep it here all stacked up, followed by a Sigil of Misery as they're pulling everything else in. And this is going to be a huge amount of count for Incarnation if they can survive this pull. This is so much... I mean, this is all the trash that was on this platform. This is so much stuff.
Yeah, and they don't have the Moonkin cooldowns available here, but you can see Yoda did activate that bond. So even though Yoda maybe doesn't do so much damage himself, he does have that bond activated, so he's getting a little bit extra damage that you don't see accounted towards him in the damage meter. It's accounted towards the damage dealer that he was buffing. So he did actually do a little bit more damage than what it looks like. But Omega Pump dealt with this quite a bit faster. They didn't pull those skirmishers though, so they're gonna have less trash percentage for a while, because this pull that they're gathering up here, that one's really dangerous as well. You can see all of those Goliaths and the Praetors unfortunately didn't gather up with the rest of the trash. So one of the Praetors that is out there on the side, they're gonna have to focus it down. Thankfully it charged into the pack now, but it's still probably gonna be high HP for a while, because they're trying to finish up these Goliaths. And they're all raging. This is so much damage. Dr. J actually dropping low. I think he triggered the pot there as well. Yeah, he's sitting in his Dreamweaver pot at this point. And one more thing to note is that they don't have a Raging Dispel on their side, Omega Pump, while Incarnation does have the Soothe on the Druid.
And that problem you talked about, this Dark Praetor getting out of the pack and taking a long time to die, Incarnation has Vortex, right? They have Ursul's Vortex that keeps those mobs beautifully stacked together. And they use that to great effect. And that means that even though they pulled this later than Omega Pump, they're finished with these pulls at the same time. And they're now both checking their bags for the Kyrian Airways flight here to the next platform. But Incarnation have 7% extra count.
Yeah, Incarnation definitely in the lead, especially if they don't have to do a squad leader pull afterwards. We've seen this by Ambition and by Echo. Pulling this left side after the first boss allows you to not have to do the squad leader before the second boss, which is something we've seen the teams have to deal with all the time in Season 1. So not having to pull that squad leader is such a big time gain because it's so inefficient to deal with that pack. But Omega Pump dealing with that... actually, they didn't commit their Ashen. Wow. Omega Pump did not use their Ashen for this pull, while Incarnation is committing it on their side. So that's definitely going to be a bit of an advantage for Omega Pump, and they might be doing a pull on top of the boss here where they commit the Ashen to catch up on the trash they're behind on.
If I'm not mistaken here, though, Incarnation ended up using their Ashen Hallow on this pull, but I don't think they used their Kyrian Spear. I think that's still on Dorky's back. I think they pulled all three of those trash pulls without the Kyrian Spear. Let's see what they're up to here. Meanwhile, Omega Pump are setting up this Warlock Gateway, and you can see it looks like they're potentially going to be skipping this trash. Oh no, they're just using that gateway to get into this bowl faster. All right, there they go. They are fighting all this stuff. What are Incarnation going to do with this trash bowl? They still have that count advantage, but they've fallen a little bit behind in terms of dungeon progression, and it's going to be invis pots. So this is where they're going to reclaim that time. They're going to pay a little bit of that count that they were ahead, and they're going to take some time in exchange and get right into this second boss.
Yeah, so very interesting that Omega Pump is just charging into the squad leader pack, even though that squad leader is applying that AoE damage reduction aura. So it looks like their strategy was to just single target down the squad leader, and now they're pulling the rest of the trash on top of this, and I would assume that Moat is committing the Ashen in just a second to be able to deal with this. So yeah, interesting differences. I do think I prefer the Incarnation strat just because that squad leader pack... Oh, and Mick actually going down for a Mega Pump here. They do have a rest that they can commit. You can already see the marker being down and the rest is up. So Mick is back up, but now they're out of battle rests. And yeah, I still think Incarnation are obviously a little bit ahead on the boss. It is 45-19. So that percentage that they're ahead on is not going to make up that much time, but the percentage is similar. So 70 versus 71%, and Incarnation slightly ahead on the boss.
Yeah, this is so close here between the two teams. They're going to need basically the same percent from the last little bit of the dungeon, but Incarnation still have that Kyrian Spear, again, unless I entirely missed them casting it before, which means they might be able to make something crazy happen. And if they can find a way to do the last little bit of the dungeon in one less pull than Omega Pump, then this small lead they have will turn into a big, big lead.
Yeah, and that's also a thing that the only reason why they can actually keep the Kyrian Spears for the later part in dungeon is because they have those two Kyrians, right? They can keep two Kyrian Spears on their backs. Well, Omega Pump, they cannot pick up the second spear because they only have that one Kyrian, so they have to use it somewhere to be able to pick up the second. So Incarnation having more freedom of where they're using those spears, and I do think they might be using it on a pretty big pull coming up in just a second here. We've seen Echo do it yesterday, and it was an absolutely crazy pull. They pulled the Helion with the Goliath and the Menders. There was just like so much trash into that pull. And there we go, Yoda picking up that second spear. And that one might be used for the triple angel pull that we might see at the very end.
Here comes this massive, scary pull. This is only like 5 enemies, but 2 of them are Hellions, and 1 of them is Executioner Varuth. So this is such a dangerous pull here for Incarnation. Look at their health bars under so much attack here, and they are taking 50% reduced healing. This is their Ashen Hallow, but even Ashen Hallow struggling to heal through this. Growl gonna fire off the Lay on Hands, and there is 1 Kyrian Spear that's been deployed. Health potions, Ice Block, every button on their bars is being used to make this pull survivable as they enter raging range. But they have a soothe. They have a soothe for that Hellion, and that's going to go a long way towards making them stay alive, but there's so much danger. Meanwhile, Omega Pump doing the exact same pull over here, and it's also so scary for them.
Yeah, so they did focus on the Helions first. Varooth, the last one to die here, but once the Helions are down, there's no more AoE damage as long as you interrupt the Goliath, so it's actually okay to keep Varooth alive, but it's still incredibly scary, and you can see just how low everyone is dropping. Dr. J using that Ice Block from the to remove, or to not get damaged by that charge from the Tormentor, and yeah, Incarnation. They are so fast. They're moving on to the next boss already. They're keeping those usurpers as well, just line of sighting them around the corner to make sure they're all stacking up here, making sure they're not hurling those spears at random people, and also line of sighting the explosives at the same time.
Yeah, this is a lot of value coming out for Incarnation. They are at 80% count. The number we're looking for is 87. Once that says 87, that means they're probably good to go upstairs, and that means they still need to find a little bit more count, but look at the way they're moving this boss. My suspicion is that when this boss reaches 0 energy, they are going to pull that little trash pull over to the side there. Not the very little one, but the medium-sized trash pull that they still haven't pulled, that they're edging towards. Omega Pump doing the same sort of thing as well. They have the exact same idea on where they're going to get their last 6% before they can head upstairs. So it's just going to be a question of who can do it fastest. Incarnation did come into this boss with a bit of a time advantage, so definitely if they can maintain that advantage, that should be enough for them. But here they go. They're going into that trash pull right now.
Yeah, Incarnation engaging those Justicars and the Wardens. Lots of casts that need to be interrupted, but the Solar Beam actually becoming in clutch here as the AoE silence just completely stopping those casts from going off. And now we also see a stun coming out, and now there's going to be single target interrupts going through. So some dark flashes that actually went through, but not too bad as the mobs go down now. And I mean, they have so much boss damage actually. This boss is just melting for Incarnation. Now they're up to 87%, so they are done. They can just go up, and they still have that spear on, I believe, Dorothy, who has still one spear left. So at this point, they could theoretically try and do that triple angel pull.
Yeah, we'll see. This is where it's going to be the make or break moment here. Incarnation have a time advantage. So if the two teams do the same thing with the Angels and both execute it equally well, Incarnation will win this match. But there are so many different ways that you can either try and do the Angels, and there are so many different ways that this pull can go wrong. And Incarnation, if even a little thing goes wrong, that will open the door back up to Omega Pump here to equalize the series. Omega Pump do end up pulling this count from the side here. I'm actually not sure they needed this, but if they did, then that's something they needed to do before they could head upstairs as well. But Incarnation are going to be doing all three of these, so this is what it's all going to come down to. The Time Warp, Junkrat drops to 4% health, the Ashen Hallow comes out, and the Kyrian Spear is deployed. Junkrat barely kept alive there, but now they're all back at 100% health. They need to kill these mobs evenly. If any of these mobs dies early, that will be a death knell for Incarnation. Here they go, everything reaching 50% health, and I don't think they have Touch Death either. I saw it used on the last boss, so this is going to be really tough here for them.
Yeah, that was actually not so clean at the start because the Angels weren't perfectly stacked, as one of the Angels just had this animation from jumping out once the stun went through from the spear, and they ended up not being perfectly even, so they had to stop AoE and single target down one of those Angels to make sure the HP is evened out. They do have Yoda to remove the Enrage from one of the Angels, usually the one that has the AoE damage aura, but it looks like they're definitely evening out the damage now. It looks very clean. One of them died though, so I have to kill them and just... Okay, there we go. They did it. Alright, that was a lot closer than it looked at the start, but one of the Angels just all of a sudden died. Thankfully, they did have enough damage to finish up the other two.
Omega Pump also nearly finishing off this pull. Incarnation are going to pull this boss first, but they're only going to pull the boss first by about 15 seconds. You know what? 15 seconds is not an insurmountable amount of advantage on this boss, especially because Omega Pump are still going to have Bloodlust for the very start of this boss pull. You can see they are wasting no time getting started here. So 10 percentage points of difference in boss HP is all that separates these two teams as we enter the final boss fight here. Both teams at 100% count, so they are all sorted on that, and they just need to do as much damage as possible here.
Yeah, the unfortunate thing for Omega Pump here is that there is no nothing for that Affliction Warlock to gain any sort of damage. And with that AoE spec that he's running, he's gonna have a hard time dealing a lot of damage. He does have Dark Glare available in just a minute, but yeah, it might be too late even at this point. You see Incarnation is already in that first intermission phase, picking up those orbs. The Spear's gonna get the boss back down in just a second. And Incarnation, I wanted to say Celestial Alignment, that's the spell, not Incarnation, name is confusing me, is up for Yoda, so that's going to be another big damage gain in just a second.
Yeah, do you think it's weird that they're not actually playing Incarnation on on their druids? I think that should be in their contractual obligations, yeah.
Right? Yeah, I agree.
This is unethical. As Incarnation here, have the boss now at 45%, Omega Pump 55%, so that 10 percentage points health difference is still all that separates the two teams. Dark Glare is going to be available soon here for Omega Pump. They'll maybe hold it for the last phase, or maybe they'll just press it right now. This phase is the longer one when compared to the last phase, so we'll have to see what they decide to do. They need to find some single target damage, though. Incarnation are opening up the gap here. It's almost 15 percentage points now, and there's not much left in this boss fight.
It's so close between those two teams as well. Both of them played so well. They only have this one single death on Mick that happened on that second boss, so it's only that 5-second penalty on the board. Otherwise, they did have completely different routes, but both of the routes did seem good, even though they were playing this different kind of comp, both of them having a weird spec with that Moonkin and that Affliction Warlock. But it looks like Incarnation is getting closer and closer to finishing off Devils, and of course they're already on 100% trash, so it is going to be Incarnation, I believe, unless something goes wrong in this last second. And yeah, it is Incarnation that finished off the boss. There we go. Incarnation winning that upper series against Omega Pump, moving them into the lower bracket.
Wow, the curse continues here as Omega Pump, our second seed, gets knocked down to the lowers where they'll have to fight for their lives as Incarnation moves to the upper bracket here to face off against Echo tomorrow on Championship Sunday. Just nuts innovation constantly with the routes, with the covenants, with the classes. Here's ironic. Well earned.